Hi, this is Rick Gray with Real Estate Super Achievers. I recently had the pleasure of interviewing Jeff Sweet, the owner of the Sweet Group Real Estate, and I want to share this interview with you. Jeff started in real estate when he was 19 years old. He started as a mortgage broker and eventually got his license as a solo agent in real estate. So when Jeff started, he did not have a lot of resources and a lot of things to fall back on, and he wasn't sure what he was good at. So he started doing what he knew from his mortgage days, and that was cold calling and prospecting. Jeff called for sale by owners and expireds and anybody he could think of that was on his dialing list. So let's dive into the interview and see what Jeff has to say about building a real estate business. So I'm here with Jeff Sweet, the owner of the Sweet Group Realty. How are you doing today, Jeff?
Good. How are you, Rick?
Good, doing great. Well, it's a pleasure to talk to you. I know we've known each other for quite a while, and you've got a great business going. And I really want to talk about how you built it. Were you on your own? Were you on a team? Did you start by yourself? How did you do that?
Yeah, so I started by myself, Caldwell Banker. Just kind of hit the ground running. Honestly, did the same. I just tried to follow the same philosophy I did when I did mortgage loans,
Mhm.
prospecting, just right out of the gate.
So it's one thing I just talked to your brokerage the other day as we talked about sort of the four different styles of lead gen and
Right.
networker, marketer, prospector, and converter. So prospector, were you making cold calls? Were you door knocking? I mean, what were you doing to meet people?
Yeah. So when I started, I mean, I didn't have a lot of resources, honestly, to do what we do now, and things have changed so much. So I just did all I knew, all I knew how to do, which was cold call. I grabbed expireds
Okay.
and I took floor calls back when there was such a thing. And I mean, I just called. I watched the real estate groups on Facebook, and if anybody looked like they had an interest, I would private message them. I actually my first transaction came from a floor call that another agent took. That the realtor said he, or no, excuse me, the potential buyer said he was working with an agent, but couldn't get a hold of his agent. Still wanted to see the house, and I was the only one who was like, yeah, I'll go open the door. It's not that far
Right.
away. And lo and behold, he really didn't have an agent. He just didn't
Right.
want to be sold.
He was
And
bluffing.
yeah, it turned into a transaction that day. Was my first transaction.
So, I mean, one of your strengths, I think, Jeff, is willingness to go after business, maybe when other people aren't.
Yeah, that's actually been a huge one.
Well, so how did your kind of production cycle evolve over the years? Did you fall, crash like I did during the recession? Did you do okay? I mean, how is I know because the last, 4 years of your business has been just a rocket ship going up.
Yeah, I mean, I really believe if you're willing to work, you'll do good no matter what the environment is. That's different for everybody, but I in real estate so far, this is probably the toughest time I've seen since the back when I was on the loan side.
Yeah.
So it's been for me, it's just been a projection upwards, I think. But I mean, I've had successes and losses and things like that along the way, but I'm also not just doing it for myself. I built a team, and then the team we built into a brokerage. So there's been
Right.
successes and failures along the way with that particular.
Right.
But business, I mean, I started out like everybody, hammering the payment. I mean, I got one deal, and that was a really big deal, and then one turned to I got consistently one or two every other month, and that was a big deal. And then I became a
Mhm.
top producer in my office, and then just one thing to
Yeah, you
another.
went from I remember it was like 2017 or 18, you were at like 50 or 60 deals a year, and then within 2 years you were at 150 deals a year.
Yeah, yeah. Once you really can hone in on something, and I'm blessed too. We had a good market, a good run as well. So
Well, that was before COVID, though. That was before the incredible market.
oh yeah, yeah. I didn't really, yeah, it was actually. So
Mhm.
yeah.
What kind of production were you doing over the last couple of years during the COVID years?
So it's kind of, I really started as I focused on myself as a busy agent, and um, you know, we met somewhere along the way as well, and we talked
Mhm.
about where I wanted to go and how I wanted to grow the business. And really, I'm a successful agent, probably always will be. I think more of my value though, and where I thrive is in helping other people. So I that's why I went the team route.
Right.
I'm a businessman by nature, so I'm very much you know how can we drive revenue and create better systems and be more proficient. That's just in my blood. But using that to help other people has been a big win for me. So
Yeah.
right now, my I'm a designated broker, and mainly my days focus on helping agents. So my production's down comparatively where it would be. I
Mhm.
still probably do 20 to 30 deals a year that I don't prospect for. Those are just referral business that I get from just past clients now. And that's from
Right.
doing nothing. Literally just answer my phone. I'm actually outside of one of their houses right now.
Okay.
They just called me. I was like, hey, we have to sell. We know we loved using you, et cetera, et cetera. So it's changed over the last few years.
Jeff learned that he wanted to be a great communicator and be available to his clients even on short notice. He was always a phone call away. So let's talk to Jeff and find out about how systems and process allowed him, who's someone who started as an individual solo agent, to build a team. I think that's really an important point. Is it's really difficult to build a team unless you've dialed in systems and processes that people can follow. And Jeff's idea was, hey, I want to be great at communication. I want to make sure my clients can get a hold of me. So let's see what Jeff has to say about that. One of the things you said was systems. I know you're really good at systems and you're very good at following them. Sometimes I think agents want a lot of business, but they don't do the things that it takes to get the business. They don't create the systems and then don't follow them.
Yeah. Consistency is hard, but it's crucial.
Well, what advice would you give? I mean, that's one of the questions I actually wrote down is what are like maybe the top 3 things or 5 things you did in real estate that were mistakes that you had to learn from that you would suggest somebody else not do?
Yeah, that's actually an easy one for me. I made a lot of mistakes, but the first ones that come to mind, it's hard probably for an individual agent. Well, there's 2 things actually with that. As an individual agent, I learned really quick not just to listen to everybody. You can jump into real estate, and man, everybody will give you advice on how to be successful.
Yeah.
Everybody. And you quickly realize that there's, it's sales. You're your own business, and it's sales. And there's very few that succeed. And with that, you want to make sure you're getting the information from the right people. That's why I sought you out when we had met, because I knew that you had credibility in the field.
Right.
Um, and you had good information. I think so. As a new agent starting out, I think having the right people to get guidance from is super crucial, because if you start doing the shotgun approach and start doing different things for different reasons that don't match your style of selling or don't match your values or things like that, you can quickly tumble and lose control.
Yeah.
On the team aspect or brokerage aspect, 100%, not not hiring the right people, not firing fast enough.
Right.
um, Sorry about that, I got a call in. So yeah, just not hiring the right people and putting them in the right place, and then not firing fast enough has been the biggest lessons in my business overall.
Yeah, I think you and I talked about that, and I teach people that all the time that have teams is hire slowly and fire quickly.
Yes. Yep. Exactly. So
everyone has an opinion about how to build a real estate team. One of the things Jeff learned was to find out and surround yourself with good mentors who knows what they're doing, who has done this before and has built an organization that he would like to emulate. So he did that. He studied other people. He realized what other people were doing by having conversations with them to build a big business and a big team. Having those systems and processes in place allowed him to grow. And what was really important for him was culture. He wanted the agents to learn from each other and learn from each other's mistakes. And in his opinion, a team can really accelerate the growth process in real estate. It accelerates how many transactions you're doing and how many sideways curveballs are thrown at you. You do a lot more on a team than you do on your own. So let's explore what Jeff talked about with his team in building culture, learning from each other's mistakes, and having a system and process to follow, and really understanding, okay, we need to lead generate and get a lot of business coming in. And having a team accelerates that process. Well, so when you went from a single agent doing a lot of transactions, you built a team, did a lot more transactions. Now you have a brokerage. Do you think about? I mean, I know help is kind of what your culture is all about, is helping people succeed. Have you thought about culture for your brokerage and your business, and have you done anything purposeful in that area?
Yeah, I think what we've focused, I mean, I feel like culture is one of those things. It's like you can talk about it, but it's almost it's some ways it can be harder to describe. You have to have the right people. You have to, from the top down, you have to have the right values. Values have to be shared amongst everybody, and everybody's so different. When we focus on culture, we really focused on, what's gonna matter the most to create a good environment, just good environment for people to thrive in, feel open to talk, and build camaraderie between one another, just like you would anywhere. And then really another big one was what kind of culture can we build that will actually survive, that will thrive in a good market, will thrive in a bad market,
Hmm.
that will be there to kind of help us through when times get tough, but then it's kind of the cherry on the cake when times are good, if that makes sense.
Hmm. Yeah. It's like a support. It's a group of people, and your teams obviously going to support each other, but the whole brokerage can be
Yeah.
that way.
It really, culture now to us is a pillar of the business. It's just as important to me as our systems.
Well, tell me about that. So I want to go back a little bit to lead gen. Like, what are the top three ways? I mean, when somebody says, geez, Jeff, you're selling 50, 60, 100 homes, a year, what do you do for lead genning? What is your style that works for you? So
Yeah, so for
expires,
me,
prospecting, calling people.
everything's different. I mean, I like to quickly, so I could go on and on about that. The style I like is I just like finding people that just want that are looking to talk real estate. I mean, they really want to, if they want to see a home. My biggest thing was just inquiries. So online lead gen. If
Mhm.
someone wanted to see a home, I was very big on. I had a very good process. My whole goal when I actually brought on my first ISA and it was just me, was to just get me in front of people that want to see homes. That's his whole
Right.
goal. I don't care if they're pre-approved. I don't care. I don't care anything. I want to know they're a legitimate person that can meet me in a house, and that's it. I'll take it from there. And I really just focused on that. So,
So you erred on the side of meeting people, not, getting everything done ahead of time,
you know,
pre-qualifying before you meet, all that stuff.
yeah, my big thing. I'm a big Jim Rohn fan, Zig
Yep.
Ziglar and all that. And I really
Yep.
was big on let me build rapport with these guys. And I don't know how many deals I've gotten where I've met someone who can't buy, and lo and behold, the dad or the friend or the son or whatever comes out of the woodwork to say, "Hey, actually, I'm going to be buying the house for him," or "I'm
Right.
looking to buy it. They're not ready yet." I must have sold at least 10 homes a year during that period, just by I showed up, they couldn't buy, but because I was willing to buy, build rapport with them, they passed me along to someone who was willing to buy.
So erring on the side of meeting people first rather than I'm going to wait until I know they can do something.
Yeah, because you don't know you unless, and I really believe that unless you have good rapport with someone, you don't even have the right to dig that far. That you need to know if you like one another, if you can work together, if you share a common goal, which is that they want to get into a home and can you help them, or they want to sell a home and can you do it?
Yeah. So Jeff was looking for people who are interested in real estate. If somebody fills out your form online, that's a potential contact. The key is to build rapport with that person and find out what their needs are and what they're really looking for. It might be the person that filled out your form isn't ready to buy or sell. That happens a lot. But at least we can build a relationship and build rapport with that person. That gives us the permission to ask, right? If we don't have a relationship, if we don't understand what their needs and goals are, we don't really have permission yet to ask anything more. This is part of that jab, 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 right hook we talked about. Building the relationship first and understanding their needs then gives you permission and the right to ask for their business. People are not going to choose to do business with somebody if they don't know you and they don't know about you. So you have to get in conversation and you have to get into rapport with people. Yeah. Okay. So online leads, you've used different platforms, I imagine, over the years.
Yeah.
What kind of like, I mean, you use Commissions Inc., I believe, Zillow, things like that.
We use Follow Boss. I've used Firepoint in the past. I'm a big fan of
Okay.
Follow Boss, which we'll probably continually use going forward. I've done Zillow, Realtor.com, your PPC leads, your Upnest, HomeLight. If you name it, I've probably done it, to be honest with you. And I mean, I think coming from the mortgage industry, I was big on online lead gen when it was kind of not even a thing. So
Mhm.
I just kind of I got my feet wet in the real estate world with it a little bit quicker than most probably did, just because I had experience with it.
Well, if somebody is getting into the business now, what like three pieces of advice would you give to a new agent?
I would say if they don't have a strong, get in the business, if you don't have a strong network to pull deals from, and if you know that right off the bat, I would interview your top two or three teams, and I would immediately jump in for the exposure. There's been a big, I know in our industry, there's that that white elephant in the room of if I'm on a team, I'm giving up splits and things like that, and I whatever that may be or may not be. Just the experience you can get by hanging around people who are closing deals and learning their methods and finding out what works in that market. Because if you take a break for 6 months, to honestly, things can change pretty quick, and you might be a little behind the buck. So just getting around those people, I think, would be number one. Two, from doing that, you're getting immediate opportunities. If you can join a team that has some sort of lead gen or guidance on sphere lead gen, if they're not doing
Mhm.
online leads, there's no right or wrong, but guidance on how to get business, that can be huge. And then obviously an office environment that fits your values and culture, that's going to be huge too. Because if you feel good while you're doing it, this business is hard enough. So if you can feel good while you're doing it, odds are you're going to do better.
Yeah. I'm big on that one, Jeff. I'm glad you mentioned that. To me, sales is about confidence and your personal power and how do you feel about yourself. If you feel good about yourself, I mean, that's what closes people, right? Words don't close people.
Yeah.
It's your passion, it's your belief, and your what I call conviction that closes the client. And if you're frustrated with where you're at, or you don't feel like you've got help and you're on an island, you're not going to close anybody either.
Yeah, 100%.
So I love that first one you said though is joining a team gives you an accelerated learning curve because you're around more transactions. If you're a new agent by yourself, you may not fill out a form for months at a time, like unless you do it for
Yeah.
practice. But if you're on a team, you're seeing that regularly. It's you're getting exposed to things so much faster.
Yeah. Yeah. And especially, yeah. I mean, just you're really jumping in and getting your feet wet from day one instead of sitting around wondering what. I see a lot of agents, honestly, most of our agents come to us after they've sat around and they've spent a majority of their time just like, well, I tried this, it didn't work. I tried this for a week, it didn't work. And they're just doing the shotgun approach. And
Yes.
if you don't have, we have a proven concept. We have a proven method that works. So we can just say, hey, this is what you're going to do, and this is what you can expect. And it's so much easier for them because what they want to do is they want to be in front of people and they want to sell. They don't
Mhm.
want to be finding out what's the best CRM to use. Like how boring is that for to focus on for 3 months?
Right.
So yeah, there's a huge advantage to joining a team or somewhere of that nature, or a brokerage that offers those types of situations.
Joining a brokerage that has the right tools and then using them enough that you actually get good at them. I think that's one thing you're saying is a lot of agents, they dabble in things for a little while over here, then a little while over here, and they never really get good at anything.
Yeah. And so I took the team concept and developed it to a brokerage, and we actually have, it's very simple. You either are on our lead gen side and you use the systems and do exactly as we do it, or
Mhm.
you just are on no systems and you're a free agent and do whatever you're going to do. So it's very
Sure.
simple. You do our method or you don't do our method. It's not like we recommend 3 CRMs or this type of lead gen or what. It's very simple. You either do it or you don't do it.
Agents need a strong network, and Jeff does a great job of pointing out a lot of people when they get started don't have that. They don't have a lot of connections, they don't have a lot of networking ability or past experience with it. They might not have a very big sphere of influence. So joining a team can accelerate that learning curve much faster. You can start doing many more transactions right away with a team than you would on your own. Jeff says don't take the shotgun approach, which is what a lot of agents do. Just dabbling in a lot of different things. I'll do some of this, and then I'll do some of that, and then some of this. It doesn't really ever lead anywhere. We've got to have some structure and some strategy to what we're doing for lead generation. And oftentimes, joining a team can give us that. It gives us a structure, it shows us what works and what the team is built for, and then it allows us to do a lot more transactions and have a lot more conversations than we would on our own. And that's how we accelerate that learning curve. Agents want to be led by something they know that works. And
Yeah.
if you know, so like example for your systems, one of the things I used to coach for Dave Ramsey for a while, and Dave Ramsey always said his philosophy was, "Hey, it's our job to get a hold of the client. If they've made an inquiry, like an online inquiry, it's our job to get a hold of them, not their job to get a hold of us." So we would call, text, or email 3 times a day, and to try and get a hold of her. Which a lot of people would say, "Wow, that's overkill or that's aggressive or whatever." But he's like, look, if they fill out a form and wanted to be contacted, it's up to us to do that. How aggressive would you say you are, Jeff, in getting a hold of people that maybe they fill out a form or maybe they had a question but now they've kind of backed off? Are you like a bulldog going after people, or what is your style?
As an ever evolving, there is my personal style is, I really, it's funny. I'm actually probably more aggressive than I would say most on going after a contact. My philosophy is, yeah, I mean, if I'm getting a hold of them, I got the right phone number. And if they filled out the information, it's not a surprise I'm calling. We don't do cold calling like we did before. So now it's,
Right.
if I give you a name and number, like they know someone's calling. Like there's no
Mm-hmm.
point. So there's no point of not getting a hold of them. We typically, the way I train people and what we really look for is someone to at least give us some acknowledgement that we're not ready, or we're thinking about it, or we're not interested. Something along those lines. Some sort of response back, because if they're not interested, then fine, we can set that aside and we can deal with them later. We don't need to pester them and try to talk them into it. I'm not big on the mind ninja stuff, on talking someone into buying. It's, we'll be here when you're ready, is more or
Right.
less how we like to approach it.
Mhm.
So now we have every lead that comes in gets touched, within, I would say, probably within 5 minutes. They get a
Okay.
phone call, they get a text. We have an automated system that reaches out to them. It's an artificial intelligence that reaches out to them via text. So
Mhm.
do we miss stuff? Yeah, because we get a lot of leads. Um, but like I said, we go back to just at least trying to get some kind of confirmation via text, email, or phone that they're where they're at in the process, and then we go from there.
Okay. So it's a little bit of a prospector slash converter system. It's almost, the person has some response involved before you go after them.
Yes, exactly.
When you mentioned earlier that your role has shifted now that you're the designated broker and the owner of a brokerage with a lot of agents. When you were in full blown production, what was your daily routine like? What were your habits like? I mean, did you get up and get on the
Okay.
phones right away? I mean, what did a day look like for you?
Yeah, so my day actually starts the night before. I learned this from Jim Rohn. He said something along the lines of, you don't start a day until it's completed, or something along those lines. So that struck
Yes.
big with me every night. So my day doesn't start until my night list is done. And how that looks is, before I leave the office, I have a paper. I've had this for years now. And if you go on it's always there, always on my desk. Sometimes I'll even take a picture of it if I have to leave the office. I know I'm not coming back, so I can make sure all my stuff's done. But I have a piece of paper split in half. The left hand side is my must. These are the things that today are getting done, come hell or high water. They have to be done. On my right side is my brain stuff. I'm thinking about doing this, or this probably needs to be done, but I don't have just it needs to be there, but it's not as important. I do
Right.
that every night. Every night, I'm, 5 days, 6 days a week, I have that written out. And so when I come to the office, I already know what I'm doing. You know,
Right.
I don't use my calendar as much as probably someone who's as efficient as I am does, but I do use it quite a bit. So I time block in chunks. So it may be a chunk of like, this is my marketing time, and I already know today is going to be different. So today I'm actually going to make calls, or today I'm actually going to go out and there's a few people I wanted to meet, and that's the time I'm going to do it in. So I do it
Okay.
kind of broad, but my
Right.
to-do list is really what keeps me super hyper focused.
So I like those. I learned that from Jim Rohn too. Jim is my mentor. So no exception priorities on the left, and then what I call flexible boundaries on the right. Things that I'd like to do, but they can move. I can move them around or whatever. But on the left hand side is no exception priorities. So Jim Rohn, for those of you who are the fans of Jim, I'm a journaler. Everybody knows me. I write my journal every day. And the quote you mentioned, he says, don't start your day until it's finished on paper. The
Yeah,
biggest
there you go.
mistake a salesperson can make is to wake up in the morning and say, what am I going to do today? Right. That's a classic Jim Rohn line. So my dad was a builder, Jeff, and I remember when I was a teenager going out and watching him build houses. And like literally, I remember him like would buy a lot. He built spec homes, so he'd buy a lot. We drive out there, and here's this like rectangular piece of ground, and then he'd say, "Well, come with me," and we pull out blueprints that he'd been working on for months, and we pull all these blueprints. I'd help him pound stakes in the ground, and we put ties at where's the stem wall going to go. And I remember just seeing that whole process from a piece of ground to I can open the door and unlock the key and get in my new house, and just seeing that entire process. And that's one thing Jim Rohn talks about is try and build a house out of your head. Right? See how it
Yeah,
would turn out. Right? I mean, builders don't do that. They don't build houses out of their head. They have plans. Every detail is done and thought through and decided before they even start. And the point is, how many of us do that in our life, though? How many of us build a business, and most of us try to build our business out of our head? We don't plan it. We don't sit down and have a journal, or we don't sit down and have a calendar and say, okay, this is what needs to happen. Like you say, you have more broader chunks, but you still know what those chunks are, and you know what your focus is and your objective is during those chunks of time. I think that's a key point. A lot of realtors don't do that. They just kind of wing it. And as Jim Rohn would say, they're trying to build a house out of their head. Well, how do you think it's going to turn out? Not
yeah,
very good.
exactly.
So I love that. I love the fact that you have some time blocking ideas, at least in your mind. And then do you have you ever set aside like different days for different things, different days? Like these days, some of my clients say, okay, on Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday, I'm calling past clients in Sphere. And on Wednesday and Friday, I'm calling for new people or meeting with people and driving out there. Do you ever split your days up like that?
Yeah, when I first started, I know what I did do was I wanted to make 50 contacts a day,
Okay.
which um looking back and after I'd gone through that, I didn't realize, like, it doesn't sound like a lot, but you have to call a lot of people to talk to 50 people. You have to call a
50 a
lot of
day
people.
is a lot, Jeff.
Yeah, but hey, I mean, sometimes I was there till 8 o'clock. I remember the sun would be going down and I'd be making phone calls. But so I would have on there, 50 contacts a day, and that was my biggest one. I mean, I would have on there, like, you know, once a week, meet, and this would probably be on my flexible side. Meet a builder, or meet someone in the industry, some loan officer, someone that I should network with, and so I
Right.
can start making more connections. And that's really how I broke it up. It was probably more broad. My 50 contacts a day was really the meat of it, because I knew that that was gonna, in the end, that was gonna give me the biggest ROI. So then the rest of it was kind of built around that, so that I didn't get just burned out from just making phone calls all day.
One question to ask yourself is, what is your daily routine like? Do you have a morning routine? Do you have consistent habits? That's one thing we talked about with Jeff, and he had a list of musts, and we call them your no exception priorities, right? There's certain things that have to get done today, and he put that on one half of his paper. On the other side, he would put things he wanted to get done, but they had more flexible boundaries around them. It's like, oh, I can get this done now, or it could happen later. But the list of musts got done every single day, and I think it's really important. He mentioned Jim Rohn, who is my mentor and one of Jeff's favorite speakers as well. So I got to work with Jim. I got the pleasure of working with him for 5 years back in the 1990s. And Jim always talked about this. Don't start your day until it's finished on paper. Well, I'll tell you. So I do coach an agent that uses Commissions Inc., which is a platform for prospecting, right? It has a dialer, it tracks everything. So I looked at her numbers in 2019. She made about $315,000 in income from online leads. Okay. So 315,000, but these were her actual numbers. She averaged 17 contacts a day, 4 days a week, 48 weeks that year. So for 48 weeks of 2019, she averaged,
Yeah.
that means some days she did more, but she averaged 17 contacts a day, 4 days a week. So people tell me, well, Rick, I want to get into online leads, or I want to do what Jeff does, and I want to get good at prospecting. That's the reality, right? It's like, I say those numbers because that's way more than most realtors do. Most realtors
Yeah.
do not make 17 contacts a day. They might make 17 calls a day, but they talk to 8 people or 10 people or whatever. But she's literally talking to 17. That means she's making, as you know, 30 or 40 calls a day or 50 calls a day.
Yeah, at least. It just, yeah, depends on where you're getting the numbers from, but yeah, it can take a lot of work. But that's just the reality of it. There's no magic to it. It's simple math to some extent. The more people you talk to, the more opportunities you're gonna have. Just plain simple.
So why? So it's interesting because I don't know if realtors are around. So I started in 1994. So there was a company back in the day. Floyd Wickman used to own a company, and they had a lead generation class you would go to called Sweat Hogs. Okay, and it was like an 8-week course, and you go in there and you would actually call people and pound the phones in class. We'd role play. We talk about scripts. Who are we going to call? Well, we're going to call for the next hour. We're going to call for sale by owners or whatever, and people would just do it. It was very high intensity, but you learned a lot on the fly, right? Well, Keller Williams Brokerage came out with something called Bold, which was kind of a personal development, but also a lead generation class. The accountability for Bold was 20 contacts a day. And I can tell you, having gone through, I've been through it 7 times myself, and having coached a lot of agents that have gone through it, 20 contacts a day is really hard for people. That's way out of people's comfort zone. So when you said 50 contacts a day, I'm like, whoa, there's not very many agents that are willing to do that, Jeff.
Yeah, well, it's very uncomfortable. I mean, even to this day, I get, there was so many times I got to jump on the phones, and it's uncomfortable. You're talking to people you don't know. I think that's probably where a lot of the resistance comes from. If you focus on it, you can make 50 contacts a day. I mean, I did it, so I know it can be done. It's just, it's not enjoyable. I think that's where the reality comes in of, if that's how you want to get business, if you don't want to get business that way, there's other ways to do it. There's no one way to do it, but you have to be real of, if that's going to be one of your ones that you're going to choose, you got to do it well. So it may be 50. I had to learn how to be good on the phones. I had to learn what was a proper way to talk to people, tone and tempo. If I get a hold of somebody, I would get a hold of somebody, and first thing I would think of was like, how are they talking? Are they talking really fast? Are they talking really slow? I mean, I started really diving into just kind of the nerdy stuff on it, of being as best I could on the phone, because I knew that was where my business was coming from.
Right. Well, you make a great point, Jeff. Doesn't matter what you do. That's one thing I love to tell people all the time in real estate is you can build it any way you want, but whatever way you choose, whether it's direct mail, open houses, networking groups, prospecting calls on the phone, whatever it is you choose, you've got to get really good and dive all in at that. You can't dabble in all of them because none of them will work. But if you get really good at any of them, they'll work.
Yep. 100%.
So what did you just know that from your mortgage background? Did you learn that? I mean, what brought you with that sort of intensity to your prospecting? Did you learn it along the way? Or?
Yeah, I just didn't it worked for the most part when I was doing loans. So I knew it was a proven method. When I did loans, I created a little script. I wrote on a piece of paper until I learned it by heart when I'd call people. And so when I got in the real estate world, I didn't have a big sphere. So, it really was just my options were limited. I just chose this when I said, this seems more logical. I can start doing this now. I know mailers take time. Open houses, it depends on where the open house is, when what the weather's like. There's a lot of differentials that can come into play, variables, where I knew I can start today. If I'm licensed and ready to go, I can call someone today. I don't need to worry about the weather or worry about anything other than, is it between times when people will answer the phone? That's it.
Yeah. Well, so that was good. So two things. One, it is, if somebody says, hey, Jeff, or even told me, hey, Rick, you need to go out right now and get a listing today. If you get a listing today, we'll pay you $20,000 bonus. First thing I'm going to do is start calling people. It's the fastest way to a listing is prospecting, right?
Yeah.
If you got to get a listing right now, that's what you would do.
Yep.
And then you said another thing, Jeff, call people when they would answer the phone. So when did you call?
So my most successful time, which was a bummer for home life, obviously, because you're working in the evenings, but it's the evenings. It's when, I actually, bad weather, when people, for whatever reason, more people stay home, is what I just assumed. And then I like to call starting about 1:00. I would call some morning calls depending on if I had some that I already knew were morning people, or I'd made contact and they'd said, call them back in the morning. I would start those in the morning, and then I'd end it, and I'd really start about 1 or 2:00. And I'd just call until I was done, really, at that point.
It's interesting because a lot of brokers will teach you, get the calls done first, do the hard thing first thing in the morning. Yeah, the reason they say that is because you're more likely to get it done. But it's not necessarily the best time to call the clients. So I agree with you. Afternoons, evenings, and even weekends are the best time to get a hold of people.
Yeah, definitely weekends. Yep.
Yeah. Well, anything else you want to add? Anything you want to say to anybody if they're thinking about getting into real estate, or if they're already in and they're maybe a little slower than they want to be? What should they focus on?
I think the big thing is get around the right people. If you get around people who are excited about what they do, you'll have the opportunity. You just need at bats. It is a hard industry. It sells, but so is everything else. You just got to get around the right people, and I think that's what matters most.
So one of Jeff's goals was to call and talk to 50 people a day. Think about that for a minute. If you're in sales, or if you're in real estate, how many of you talk to 50 people a day? Jeff did that. He actually lived that process because he realized, hey, not everybody is going to click with me. Not everybody is going to resonate. So I need to make a lot of contacts to make sure I'm in front of enough people. I think that's a really big takeaway. Jeff also mentioned he liked prospecting. I teach people there's 4 different categories to generate leads, from networking to marketing. Then we have prospecting, and we also have converting. Well, Jeff's a prospector. So if you're a prospector, it is somewhat of a numbers game, and making 50 calls a day is not easy. In fact, I've taken several different classes where 20 a day was a requirement in a lead generation class, and 20 contacts a day is a push for most realtors. So think about how many you're making and understand the decision Jeff made was, look, I want to build a big business. I need to talk to a lot of people to make sure I'm resonating with the right ones. And if they're not ready at that particular moment, I want to build a relationship and get in rapport with them. So when they are ready, I'm the one they choose, because they're not going to choose me if they've never heard of me and if I've never had a conversation with them. I think Jeff did a great job. He has a big business now. He owns a brokerage. He sells hundreds of homes per year, just him and his team, not counting his brokerage. And he started off all by himself, trying to figure out the right systems and getting in front of people on a regular basis and committing to lead generating. Then he committed to creating a culture where other people could learn and accelerate that learning curve. So think about your own business in that context. How much do you do as far as lead generating? How much are you getting around other people and having some mentorship from people who've done it before so you can learn at an accelerated rate? I just love this interview with Jeff, and it just points out it's a great story of someone who gets into real estate, has a plan, takes action, and is consistent. Right? Success is not always that difficult as far as the concepts go. It's hard as far as the energy and the mental requirements, but it's really more simple than most people make it out to be. It's just being consistent over a long period of time. And Jeff has done a magnificent job of that.